Okay. Hi, everybody. I am here with my dear old friend, not old like old, but just my old dear friend, Stevi Calandra. Stevi and I have worked together off and on throughout the years, and we're going to talk about life after television and what goes on. So, Stevi, tell me like what you're doing right now. What's going on?
All right. And I call Shannon a longtime friend. So I keep the OLD out of the conversation.
That's better.
Um, so I am now at the IMF, the International Monetary Fund. And basically I am working in their learning program, mostly online learning, sometimes blended and hybrid. But I work as a supervising producer and handling all of the multimedia assets that are required in courses and in learning these days. And that's what my role is here.
Okay, so give a little bit of a background. Tell us a little bit, about your time in television. Kind of like where you started, where you ended up, kind of give a little synopsis.
So television was actually a second career for me. I was an ESL teacher before television, and then I got to television, and I started in '99 at a place called Discovery Communications, and
Hmm.
that's where Shannon and I first met. And that was great. I started out as a nighttime editor, and then moved into producer roles, and then producer editing, producing, writing. When I left there, I freelanced for a little while, and then I ended up at National Geographic Channel, which were later turned into channels. And I was there for 10 years. And in that time, I really got to work on all kinds of fun projects. The funnest was one that Shannon really helped me first form, and which was developed with Steve Burns, called Unlikely Animal Friends. And that was just kind of like a bright light to
Yeah.
anybody that was involved in it, to even watching the shows. It's so much fun, and it has really kind of caught on. You see on the internet,
Hmm.
everybody's always talking about unlikely friendships. So that was a great experience. A few other things I got to do when I was there is I got to do a couple of, I would say, an interstitial and a coda. It's kind of funny. One interstitial was for a great CGI kind of special program called, you know what? I don't know at the end. I think it was The Great Dinosaur Escape. It was about dinosaur migration.
Okay.
And I got to do these interstitials after each, so you can hear a little bit of something. So we got to kind of visit Dinosaur National Park in Calgary, and also go to some labs where they have, either bones of dinosaurs and, mastodons and mammoths. And that was a great experience to kind of talk to those people and create little interstitials. And then one of the meaningful things I felt like I got to do was a coda for the documentary Restrepo. And that was
Right.
something that, I got to sit and talk with the two the two men who made Restrepo
Hmm.
originally, and also some of the people who were in that battalion at the time. And it was so moving, everything about it, kind of what they did and what they brought to the front, of everyone's mind, of what it's like to be in a situation like that. One of the worst. They ended up having to withdraw from the Korengal Valley.
Yeah.
Um, and it was so inspiring to me to talk to everyone there that was trying so hard to kind of sort through their lives after all this occurred. So
So
those were my highlights.
it's interesting because one of the things you talk about is during your time, you were dealing with both long form and short form. So you weren't stuck in one type of like, I only do long form documentaries. You were finding ways to tell stories kind of all over the place.
And I think that was something that, I remember, at some point trying to go to, so I say a marketing person and say, hey, I would love to do some of this. And they said, no, you're long form. And and I think it's something that's very important to remember, that there are basic skills that will help you no matter what. And a good story is a good story. And a
Hmm.
good story can be told in different ways. And the story itself can usually tell you, is it long form, is it a short form story? But I think anybody shouldn't be worried about saying, oh, but this is what I've done, even if someone says that to you. oh, but you've only done this. Well, then you move on. You know what I mean? It's obviously I was an ESL teacher before this, so they could have said, well, you've never done this. But
Well, it's funny. I didn't realize that because that's the same thing with me, is most people don't realize this. Before I was a television producer, I was a talent agent for creative professionals and advertising professionals and marketing in Chicago. And then, I had to get back to DC and I was an editor in college and someone had faith in me. And just like you, I became a nighttime, midnight editor at Discovery Channel. And, it's because we knew how to tell a story. We knew how to learn the technology and we knew how to kind of put everything together. Yeah.
I think was a very big lesson for me, because when I first went back and I said, well, I guess I have to go to school to figure out how to move on to this. So I went back to get an MFA in film and video. And at the time, they were just moving into the use of Avid as editing, nonlinear editing. And I remember talking to some people at that time. One woman was a film editor, and she was pretty much like, I just hate this. I only like working on a Steenbeck with real film. And I was like, wow, okay. And then we kind of moved on from there. And then the technology kept doing that. Then people were like, well, there's just thing called Final Cut Pro. It's like, well, what's that? And the last thing that came about, which was Adobe Creative Cloud, I remember for a minute, I said, do I really want to learn something else? And then I said, yes, you do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what's really important. Don't age yourself out in any way.
Mm-hmm.
Look at the new technology. It might take a little bit, but now this has been my favorite ever. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I love the Creative Cloud.
Well, talk about the transition, talk about the jump from television to doing, still being creative and still telling stories, but not necessarily just for television.
So after I left National Geographic, I kind of moved into a position with believe it or not, the University of Maryland School of Business.
Mm-hmm.
And and that was a very interesting position, because it was my job to kind of take kind of a whole bunch of business and economics professors and their research and try to make it palatable to the outside world. So I was more like a media and marketing director. We did interviews with them to try to talk to me, because if I understand you, other people will understand you, because I don't know anything about business and economics. So it
Mm-hmm.
worked out really well. We did that. We did website. We did blogs and scenes. We did all these things. We did a podcast called the Ink Tank, INC. I don't believe it's around anymore, but
Mm-hmm.
it was really great. It was basically about technologies that disrupt and innovate.
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of did all these things to kind of move that along. So after that, during the pandemic, I left University of Maryland, and I heard about this position here at the IMF. And I do believe probably my work in the business school made them go, well, maybe she can handle this at the IMF.
Mm-hmm.
So the IMF had been working for a long time in online learning. What they do is most of their learning is for, more like government officials in growing economies, right? So
Okay.
we do capacity development, macroeconomics and finance and statistics, and it could be tax revenue administration, could be any of those things that you're trying to help maybe another country learn more about, say to a minister of finance. It's also available to the public too. But at this point, I think the focus is to try to help people kind of take all the expertise here at the IMF. And at the IMF, they used to do almost all in-person learning, teaching. You go out and you go to that country, right? And that can be hard. And of course,
Mm-hmm.
during the pandemic, that really became
Oh
apparent,
yeah.
because can't go anywhere. But they realized that doing some online learning or blended learning helps them scale up.
Mm-hmm.
So, right, anybody anywhere can learn all about anything they want, monetary and finance statistics, quarterly national accounts, whatever they want, and they can kind of get that online. And then also what they do, if they're blended, they want to have a live component, then they have an online component that the, say, learners do, and then they can go to a live component. It makes it, all the more useful that they got to do that.
Mhm.
So this has enabled, I don't know what the numbers are exactly, but there are probably, we have close to 100 courses, and we have, I believe close to 100,000 people who've taken the courses.
Oh,
So,
that's fantastic.
so it's a very large
Yeah,
number.
something that you said that really hit me is that one of the things that we learned as nonfiction producers is we're not biologists, we're not scientists, we're not economists, we're not paleontologists, but we learn how to take that information and put it in a way and present it in a way that is provocative and engaging to the audience. And that's exactly the talent you brought to both University of Maryland and to this current job.
I think that is some, and I do believe, and I used to, especially at that University of Maryland job, say, there's a value in the fact that when you talk to me, you're not talking within an echo chamber. You're not talking to somebody who also has the exact same background in terms of education. Because then you can really kind of say, okay, how can some of these important concepts get out to the world? And obviously, media is the way to do that, in any form, whether it be a data visualization, a video, a graphic that can really help, or podcast. And I think those are the ways to really reach as many people as possible.
You mentioned earlier about technology, transitioning. With that transition, we had to learn in the very beginning, we were linear editors and then non-linear editors, and it actually put us at an advantage because we knew how both things work. Are you finding it? How are you finding the new technology today? I mean, you mentioned earlier that you love the cloud and you love everything that it has to offer.
I do. I do love it. And, obviously we're seeing even more change lately. And we're having to really think about what AI is going to be doing to
Hmm.
everything.
Hmm.
And it's going to be interesting because, for now, I just had someone send me, so he took a script, or, from a particular discussion, a panel,
Hmm.
and he put it into an AI program, and it turned it into a podcast. And it sounded like real people having a conversation. So I know. So it's very fascinating. And that's even after a couple of years ago, we were doing something and we had the AI voice, and it sounded very robotic.
Hmm.
It doesn't sound robotic anymore. So I think that we're going to have to be even more astute. You can't walk away from it. It's going to keep happening. It's going to keep expanding. And I think unless you take control of whatever's going to happen, and stay in the know and stay knowledgeable about it, because just because we turn our heads, it's not going to go away. And I think, it brings up different issues, so many different issues. But I think in general, I mean, I know when I go into Photoshop and AI helps me remove the background, boy, you see, we have certain things that we all like in AI. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it's
Yeah.
kind of like, it's very nice. Or you have to write a little thank you note to someone. You go, oh, maybe ChatGPT will write the thank you note better. I don't know.
Look, I'm a big believer in Grammarly, and because I know I struggle with my writing of slipping between tenses, and it helps me, but that's part of it. It's part of it. It's learning how I write. It kind of gets those nuances. So it's I think like a lot of new technology, it's as long as we use it in a way that still allows our creativity and our productivity and everything to go forward, then it's something to be embraced. So as I said, I asked you to chat today because the television industry is going through some changes and going through some issues. There's large contraction. There's a lot of people who are looking for work, and you have successfully moved on, used that experience into finding success. What piece of advice would you give to others who may watch this, who may say, I don't think I can get out of television? What advice do you give them?
I mean, I think it's going to sound a little trite, but you have to keep your mind open. So when you're involved in something, you think, well, this is it. There is nothing else. If I can't, if I can't make it in television, I can't make it. You know what I mean? But honestly, there is so much out there. There's so many stories, that need to be told. And we have to remember, companies are trying to tell stories. Nonprofits are trying to tell stories. International organizations are trying to tell stories. And a lot of them are still a little confused about, well, what are these people that work in, what kind of person do I need? you know, so I would say what you need to do is you need to keep looking out there and you can tell them what they need. You know what I mean? You can kind of
Yeah.
go to them and say, look, I was just kind of looking at what you were doing, and I just wanted to say, that there might be another way to do this. Because there's still so many companies and organizations that would love to have people on board and that have no idea what kind of, say, a producer, writer, editor can do for them.
Awesome. Well, Stevie, it's always awesome to be with you. Again, we're going on 3 decades of friendship. I truly appreciate it. We've grown up together, and not what you didn't
Very
say.
true.
We're well. How did you? We weren't old. What were we?
We're long timers. We're longtime
Long
friends.
timers. That's it. That's a much better way of putting it. Well,
That's true. True.
thank you, dear. And yes, wonderful.
See you soon.
See you soon.